But listen, someone has to challenge the status quo. Like us, we're going to be talking about quality and stuff, but, we can't be mediocre, especially if we consider hospice profound work. Yeah, I'm not going to live a trepidatious life. And if we get hospice and we've been around it, why not fully extend our art? So yeah, I think all things good start with quality. And this idea that quality comes from within. So bad prophets are slashing quality because, for example, Wall Street, they want more and more and more. And there's a problem with more. You can ask for so much more that you literally squeeze all quality out of the fruit, leaving just an empty rind. Our goodness is not goodness without edge, as Emerson put it. That our words are hollow and meaningless unless we're willing to hold people accountable. That is, administer some pain if the standards are not being done. And I will not let anyone out alive. I've trained thousands of clinicians in the perfect visit, and I have no problem at this point in my career pressing people to their limits. I don't care if they cry, but they're going to learn how to do a visit. And what happens when you press people like this? Oh, some people saying, this is cruel. Oh my God, Andrew. Yeah, it means something. That might be the first, last, the only visit that patient will ever get.
Do you find, Andrew, that the visit is a little bit easier, although it feels like you're really kind of describing your journey, that is the road less traveled?
All I guess, want really is that people take out the mirror, and myself included, and we take a look at it and say, what is real? What is truth? And what is the best and highest purpose I can be doing with my life?
Welcome to our crossover show with Anatomy of Leadership and TCNtalks. Now, here's our host, Chris Comeaux.
Hello and welcome to today's podcast. I am super excited today. Our guest is Andrew Reed, the CEO and Chief Teaching Officer of Multiview Incorporated and recording artist with Universal Virgin Music Groups. From Andrew's bio, he's known for many things, but primarily for his music, expert organizational work, and especially in hospice. He's a critically acclaimed songwriter, studio guru, guitar whiz with Universal Virgin Music Group, under World Sound Artists International with numerous Billboard and other global charting successes with his own releases, and he's also been a producer of other artists. He's the founder and CEO of Multiview Incorporated, and Andrew also has a unique podcast, What Are You Willing to Throw Your Life Away On?, where he liberally shares ultra-practical advice and ideas, as well as philosophical explorations on the topic of life itself. Andrew has absolutely lived a bold life, which has led to some staggering worldly achievements in the arts, as well as business. However, these attainments have been accompanied with some catastrophic losses, including 2 children, wives, health, breakdowns in injury, properties and material possessions and natural disasters, and a few fortunes along the way in the process of epic comebacks. All of this experience comes out in the depth and profound nature of his music, his public speaking, his writings, and companies that he creates and helps build. And on a personal note, I just got to tell Andrew, thank you. We're actually here in downtown Hendersonville, North Carolina, and many years ago, Andrew actually recruited me here. And so,
yeah, no, I was chair of the board at Four Seasons, and I put my foot down. I said, here's 3 candidates because, obviously we work with so many hospices, and here's 2 real seasons ones. Here's this young fella from Pensacola. He's the CFO. He's not the CEO. I'm putting all my chips on him, and I advise you to do the same thing. And
wow.
Yeah, and that was it. But I twisted their arm, but they did it. They had the sense, because the point is, you go with the energy.
Well,
and we didn't need an old energy at that time. Well, not to discredit the other
You took a
candidates.
chance on me. I was 30 years old. And, you said something to me. I was thinking about this last night, prepping for this podcast. And you said, this community, this Hendersonville, North Carolina community, you said, this is a place where you can put down your roots and raise a family. And you changed my life from that perspective. We've raised 5 kids here, and all of them are back in this, now making careers and giving back to this community. So there's so many reasons why I'm thankful for you, but I just had to say that.
Well, that's an impressive achievement. I think of all things in life, I think being a parent, something that, again, has not worked out well for me, is probably one of the higher attainments, and we don't know where our lives always go, but that's a high compliment. Because I just think that being a parent's about as difficult of a job as there is.
No, amen. We could do a whole podcast of all the screw-ups I did in that area. But I appreciate you saying that, Andrew. It's interesting. One of them actually is in hospice. I don't know if you know that, which is kind of cool, seeing that next generation now and my son is one of many now that we're seeing second generation or maybe third generation.
Yeah, probably third generation at this point, because I was second generation.
Good point, yep.
And because the Schumachers and all, the Deborah Dailies and all those Gretchens that started it, and then, we're the young snot-nosed guys behind that, and yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome.
I consider both of us in the same class.
I was wondering if, I remember I came from Business America, and I just felt like, I always say I was like Dorothy in Oz when she woke up, and these people are not talking about numbers, although I fell in love with the purpose and the passion. And I don't know if you remember where we met. It actually was an NHO.
Yeah, no, I remember you were there, and I was stirring up the crowd as typical. But listen, someone has to challenge the status quo. Like us, we're going to be talking about quality and stuff, but we can't be mediocre, especially if we consider hospice profound work. And I'm just, no, what is the highest ideals that we aspire to? And yeah, I remember you coming up, and there's instant rapport, and I thought, there it is.
Wow.
And then as Providence, has it, there's a need, and here's somebody that feel that. I perceive them as having great leadership within them, and because that's what you hire for.
Wow. Well, thank you for saying that. Well, I always like to start our podcast, Andrew, asking our guests, what's their superpower? And I'm so interested to see how you're going to answer that.
My superpower is probably my IQ of 40. Keeps me humble. But now I do keep 20 on each side of the brain just to keep it balanced and stuff. So that's probably it. That, again, from birth, I was probably denied a few drops of sap, or maybe my oxygen tube was constricted or whatever. But I think that's my superpower, because I don't know enough not to go forward.
That's awesome.
So therefore, I'm not going to live a trepidatious life. And if we get hospice and we've been around it, why not fully extend our arc? So at least find out where our arc ends.
Mm-hmm.
And that means a lot of defeats and failure, not being particularly devastated by failure.
It's interesting. If you mirrored it back to me, I kind of mirror back what you just said, but even just kind of knowing you and thinking of your life story, your passion and your vision for more, and then your tenacity to stick to it. Does that resonate?
Well, no. Okay. Yeah, you've hit on a couple of tenacity, I think, is a characteristic. In the podcast, I know I'm working up what is success, because people have very feeble and a lot of times relatively unconsidered ideas about what success is. But again, I was a space cadet growing up, and why? I would just get bored in school. I mean, IQ wise, I did very well on all this, but I was the class clown, and I'd make Christmas trees on standardized testing forms and all this. And they failed, and that devastated me. But the point is I was focusing on something. And so focus, as we know from all kinds of academic studies, from Stanford to Duke to Western Kentucky, whatever, again, the quality of the most successful people in this world is that of self-control, self-regulation, or focus, which explains Steve Jobs and, taking a bankrupt Apple and in 5 years turning it into the most valuable company on the planet, because of the vision of a leader and having a clear vision of what quality looked like, where the quality of the inside of the PC or the device was just as stunning as the external, in a place where no one else looks.
When I think about that and think about Jobs too, I think he was incredibly creative and also a brilliant marketer. And I think about you. Do you identify with those two comments?
Well, yeah.
Or descriptors?
First of all, with stammering the lips, I go through most things in my most awkward way of presenting myself. But I think it's the passion or the mission. And I think any great teacher, a really effective teacher, has to be in love with their topic and willing to get lost in that. And though they stumble sometimes or maybe don't come off quite as polished as they would like, that passion for whatever, hopefully that high ideal is really, I think, what carries the day.
Wow. Well, let's get into what you gave me a good way to frame this. And so when I wrote my book, The Anatomy of Leadership, I literally had you in mind when I did the chapter.
I would definitely be the feet.
No, and I wrote the
because
chapter.
I'm on the ground a lot, just so I'm familiar with that.
But when I wrote the chapter on margin, just because, I felt like you were the first person that, I grew up in a world of accountants, KPMG, Pete Morwick, all these CPAs. I feel like you looked at numbers differently. And what I was trying to capture with that chapter was margin is not a mathematical equation. It really is an interesting barometer of all the interesting inputs, the leadership, the people inputs, how they utilize their time. And a margin is a barometer. And I literally was thinking about you. And what we've done is kind of use this Anatomy of Leadership podcast, because this is kind of a table of contents of what is leadership, bringing great people. Well, you were the first guest I thought of. So it's kind of sad it's taken me 2 years to reach out to you, because when I thought, who do I want to talk to margin about?
Yeah.
When I asked you, you said, hey, we should frame the conversation about quality comes from within. And I had to stop for a second. I'm like, what? I want to talk about margin. Why did you want to frame it in that way? Because it almost feels like they're two different topics.
No, they're good. We have to separate good profits from bad profits, or good margins from bad margins. And our phenomenal economics should be a natural byproduct of doing quality. So if we do quality, we're helpful, complete customer delight, satisfaction, and whatever we do, serving people well. Yes, and then we deserve margin. And obviously, you get all the efficiencies, especially if we understand standardization. We understand Six Sigma concepts of how to institutionalize it within a truly professional organization. Just how to arrive at that. But yeah, the economics, of course, I refuse to work with anything that doesn't make money, because that's not sustainable. Whether it's a for-profit, not-for-profit, obviously for-profit really doesn't have any other option than to generate a profit, whereas a not-for-profit can be a little more sloppy. I'm not trying to belittle that, but the point is, when you have the community dollar, well, the more you have, sometimes you can get a little bit lax. Whereas, I want to have in both, regardless of for-profit, not-for-profit, is that people operate with integrity, that they manage the monies that we're getting from taxpayers, from Medicare, Medicaid, all the forms, and we manage it well, bottom line. So yeah, I think all things good start with quality. And this idea that quality comes from within. After Helene and all the fires, we went through 2 natural disasters. You can listen to my podcast and learn all about burnt trees and things, and bridges out and being cut off for 6 months and what have you. And we've got it back open, and we've been doing these leadership, obviously Special Forces and Green Brave, because we're doing work with them, that we really met through Helene, because they had never seen a civilian population quite organized as effectively, and that apparently made some impression on them. So therefore, they've been sending their generals and colonels and stuff up for training, and because they could use System 7, of course, too. But then we've been holding, obviously CEO retreats. And we've always, again, we've trained like 10,000 people in our leaders, CEOs, and senior executives through our tough trainings and stuff. And the point I try to really get across to people is that our lives don't so much happen to us as it flows out of us. So the quality that manifests in this C1 world of tangible things that we can touch, reality, starts from our hearts. And it's getting a vision of what quality looks like, just like when we started Multiview. Me and David looked at each other and said, phones are very important. Let's have all phones be answered within 3 rings by a competently trained person and foster customer delight. And that whatever we say, we have to be able to do because people want predictability. And having these radical ideals of standard, it came from within. And just on that, right now we're at 3.5 years without a single phone call coming in. We get hundreds, obviously, because our clients are all across the country. 3.5 years without a single phone call not ringing more than 3 times. And of course, and then follow through is virtually perfect. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think the last time there's any kind of screw up was maybe 8 months ago. Mm-hmm. And this is, that'd be thousands of interactions. And so the levels of quality that we aspire to is something else. I mean, now with that said, one time we went like 2 months and the phone rang 4 times, and it's like, whatever. The longest we've ever went is in our about 30 years of doing this is 4.5 years.
And you said something earlier. And so what would bad profits be? Let me ask you 2 questions. What would bad profits be?
Bad profits are not training your staff adequately would be the first thing I would attack, because all quality comes from the quality of our training system. And we're seeking more system solutions rather than people solutions. Too many organizations say, if I just hire that great person, they're going to make my world better. They're going to be my savior. And that's silly thinking, unless you need a change agent. So bad profits are slashing quality because, for example, Wall Street, they want more and more and more. And there's a problem with more. You can ask for so much more that you literally squeeze all quality out of the fruit, leaving just an empty rind with no quality anymore. Mm-hmm. And whereas when we're talking about the model, not just the financial part, which we're known for, is getting the phenomenal economics, but getting that quality up there. So with bad profits, all quality, of course, comes from the quality of our people system. Again, the system solution. And what I advise organizations to do is to make their standards, their quality standards, the financial standards that are sustainable rather than optimal. Why? Optimal breaks. When you're always pushing everything to the max, you break people, you break systems, you do all kinds of things, always striving for more and more and more. That is a bad profit. Whereas if you can say, hey, I can give you a 21% return every single year with very little deviation between that, in good economic times and bad economic times, where it scales automatically, a system of really self-regulation. To me, that's a higher value situation than always going for record profits.
That's a key point, Andrew. I was actually going to ask you. I was listening to a podcast, I think it was Jordan Peterson, and there was this Jewish scholar, and he just wrote this amazing book, and he was talking about basically seasons, and that he was kind of referring it back to businesses, but that you have harvest seasons, you have planting seasons. And this is good because I'm asking questions of things I think people always want to ask you. Like, as Andrew saying, the numbers always should go up. And so now that I think about it, you don't revise the model margin every year. So that's a key.
That's why it's always based on a percentage basis. Everything is in proportion, and why we don't believe in budgets for the management of ongoing operations. I think that's just utter foolishness for a truly thinking person. For short-term building projects, yeah, a static budget works, but not for something where you have ever-changing revenues or sales or patient volume in the case of hospice. You want something that goes up and down, as well as a workforce that does the same thing.
Thank you to our Anatomy of Leadership sponsor, Dragonfly Health. Dragonfly Health is also the title sponsor for Leadership Immersion courses. Dragonfly Health is a leading care-at-home data, technology, and service platform. With a 20-year history, Dragonfly Health uses advanced technology and robust analytics to manage durable medical equipment and pharmaceutical services as part of a single efficient solution for caregivers, patients, and their families. The company serves millions of patients annually across all 50 states. Thank you, Dragonfly Health, for all the great work that you do.
So this key point that you just made then, optimal versus sustainable.
Yeah.
So how do you determine what's sustainable compared to the optimal?
Well,
because that capitalist system, right, wants to push to, well, let's keep running that thing hot and get that optimal for as long as we can. The numbers always have to go up.
Little reptilian brain there, neediness. Sustainability and the one thing about when we set our economic standards, that is our model percentages of net patient revenue or net revenue or earned revenue, you might say, is that they can be modified at any time, with 15 minutes. Obviously you don't need a budget process. You don't have to spend months. In 5 minutes, you can set the new standard. If there's an innovation or even an economy or payment method or whatever, that can be adapted to very quickly. But I think the point is to have everything above, slightly above, maybe at the 60th percentile. So we're looking at this on a normally distributed bell curve with the median, the mode, the 50th percentile, the place where all the measures of central tendency converge. We want to be better than that. We don't want to do average. And I usually find that when you go 60, 65% in on each of your amounts, the cumulative impact is astronomical, usually 300 or 400% greater than the median.
This is going to be a rabbit trail, but do you use this in your own investing strategy?
Absolutely. No, I live anything that we say in the multi-view world. I don't speak from an academic standpoint. I've hired 3 of those to run hospices, and they all failed because there's a big difference between, this is how we manage the modern organization as third wave management now. It's an information age, Andrew. Rather than spilling blood and saying, this division is gone. That nurse that's been with us for 26 years is not giving us much ROI. Gone. And maybe that sounds cruel, but we live in a competitive world. And if we're going to be good stewards of things, everybody has to be doing their job. And we use the compensation system, of course, to force them out without any supervision. They just go on their own if they're not meeting their numbers because they feel some pain. On the other hand, they're richly rewarded, better than any other payer if they're doing their job and getting their marks.
You alluded earlier, the System 7. And so I'm going to actually, let me kind of set the table on this one. So I know what System 7 is. Some of the listeners may not.
Yeah, I got a lot of acronyms. Andrew, you speak in different language. Well, you haven't heard these Green Berets. I mean, these guys are language. I went up there to the Japanese house. That's the J house that that overlooks the church and some of the ponds that we have. And they have all these acronyms, and I was looking at their boards and these kernels and stuff and say, what the heck?
What do they talk about?
Yeah. Oh, is that me?
Well, I want to set the table because I want you to explain System 7, but I want to ask it in this way. Because this is something that I've always wondered about you. And so you're an artist at heart. And so...
Again, I had the same... I started out pretty big league managers, managed, Don McLean, Genesee, Bruce Springsteen, what have you. I was with the same outfit because, we were good.
So how do I reconcile this creative person and this person like System 7, we train to the system?
The right left brain hemispheres thing? I think I started out pretty artsy-fartsy because probably early in my life, I think I was mainly right brain dominated. And I think that's really the thing that separates and causes some people to be more liberal or conservative. It's almost biochemical because you can have a totally rational argument and nobody moves their position.
I've always thought that. I've never heard someone actually say that out loud.
So biochemical. So I think it's that, but also you have to throw in environment and other things too. Yeah. So that kind of makes the precise calculation a little clumsy. But here's the thing is when I decided that the music business, because I had a major label deal, 6-album deal, And then I went up to the top floor of the United Artists building and told them I quit. And I just breached my contract because I didn't like the road. I didn't like all these fruitcakes and nuts in the music business. And I still have issues with that. But Alex here can testify that we, again, I'm in that 0.5% of all artists that are still with a major label, and you just cannot do everything you want to do. So with that said, I say the heck with this. No more fruitcake life and strange people. Oh, I got to make a living. So I taught myself how to program in C++ and BASIC, making compensation software and servicing. That then became a system analyst, and back then become a CPA and all that. Okay, so by cutting off some aspect of my life, I had to, or was forced to kind of recreate myself. And I discovered that I had a left brain too, which is the concrete, whereas the right hemisphere of the brain is spatial. And so I found I had abilities I would have never known except for the cutoff. And this is, I think, an aspect of the reconciliation of light and dark, good, bad, however you want to phrase it, but that both are needed in some way. And that negative forces us often to go in a direction that perhaps was not part of our grand design, but yet ends up causing an incredible benefit. It's almost like nothing can be taken away from us where there's not an equivalent benefit that offsets it.
That's an incredible point. So do you take, obviously, talk about System 7 for a second, and then I'd love to see, how do you take this building systems approach even into the artistry that you do now? Because they really do feel like this dichotomous world. And because I think some of the pushback that people might get about, like my first nurse mentor at Covenant Hospice, and said, Chris, hospice is all art. I'm like, but I grew up in manufacturing, which was systems and process.
Yeah.
And I bought what she said, but I also wanted to push back. And like,
you're correct in doing.
And it is a bit of both, isn't it?
Yeah, no, that's the balance. The razor's edge in the middle. The Zen man that can sit in the middle and say, "Oh, this is an interesting game here." Yes, and I think that's the dichotomy in all of life, that it is art and it is science at the same time, just like leadership. You've alluded to that before, because you can do everything by the book. For example, the perfect visit. You could do a technically perfect visit and still have it be a failure if the feel is not there.
I'm so glad you said that.
And so, that brings us kind of to, the marriage, I think, of both the spatial aspect and the concrete practical. And they both have to exist in a healthy organism or, organization in this case. But System 7 in people development, obviously both you and I are CPAs. We've both been CFOs and all of this. And so, yeah, we're absorbed with the number. We get pigeonholed into that. But when we really look at financial statements, we realize that the true assets and liabilities of any organization are walking in the halls. They're not on the balance sheet. And so if we're going to make any real impact as far as best known practice, again, I don't like to say best practice because that's a bit arrogant. Nobody knows what the best practice is.
Yeah, our team we've adopted that. We love
it. It's very liberating. To move the numbers, we've got to address the people issues. And see, to me, the first question is, how do we develop the most elite, world-class workforce that we can? It comes to the training systems. Where do we start? Well, let's start with modeling some of the best teachers that have ever walked on this earth. What practices, what methods do they use? Okay. Well, what about the greatest organizations? From the Romans to whatever, it doesn't have to be modern people. It can be ancient times. And what have they done? And then have the humility to imitate and try to adapt those practices, to our respective organizations. I think that is the whole thing. And so developing people is at the heart. And this is when that big Wall Street company paid me all this money years ago to develop this brand new hospice platform. They said, Andrew, we want something very different, and all this. And the org chart's one of the places where I started. And I said, we're not going to have this hierarchical pyramid, the pyramid scheme thing. And we're not going to invert it and the servant leadership thing. I think we can do better than that. And in the center of this, at the top is patients and families. You could actually put God on top, I'd prefer to do that since I'm willing to, avail myself to intelligence and energy beyond myself. But patients and families and community, because they will write every paycheck we will receive. So there's the real boss. Then your clinicians, they have to be, taken care of, then clinical leaders. And then we get down towards the center of the org chart, there's people development, the center of the universe. And that is where we want to have our most talented people and leaders in an organization, because they will then help to reproduce quality of what they have become, because quality is from within, or, it's within us, just like the kingdom of God, you might say. Okay, so we put our superstar people, leaders, trainers, because normally if someone's a good leader, they're usually a pretty good trainer as well, or a teacher. But yet, I can ask people in a typical people development or education area, or even CEOs, tell me the steps of standardization. Tell me the requirements for standardization. Tell me how to design a position state of self-control. These are all things that we wire, because it's silly to hire supervisors to lord over people to make sure they're doing their jobs. That went out the MBI world. This is why we can flatten an organization like a pancake, even if you have 20, 30 sites where you have your executives, and it's as flat as a pancake because you have no middle managers other than the immediate manager to misinterpret the directives.
Can you talk, Andrew, about some of the best people developers you've ever seen?
Yeah.
You kind of alluded to it, but say a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I'll even name Deborah May, Hospice. That's when I got my first real vision of what first-class educator would look like. And, she was, I think, ex-Air Force. Deborah, if I get that wrong, correct me. But, hands behind, she would walk in to a class, full dress, looking great, maybe even shoulder bag, roller bag, whatever there, put down the barrier and say something to the effect of, welcome to, I'm going to say Sunny Day Hospice. It's so great to have you here because you have been selected in some way, and it's not easy to get a position here. So you're to be congratulated on that victory now. And a lot of you have been doing visits for a long time and think you know how to do a visit, and then you turn your back for effect. But I'm going to show you how to do a visit. And I love you all so much that none of you are going to get out of here alive until you can do a perfect visit under stress conditions. Let's go. Because quality takes edge. Our goodness is not goodness without edge, as Emerson put it. That our words are hollow and meaningless unless we're willing to hold people accountable. That is, administer some pain if the standards are not being done. And I will not let anyone out alive. I've trained thousands of clinicians in the perfect visit at this point, as well as, Nancy, the whole team that does the certification process. And by golly, not one of them's going to get it. I'll fail the whole class if they can't do it to my standards. And I think that's kind of the attitude that you just have to own your students. And I have no problem at this point in my career pressing people to their limits. I don't care if they cry, but they're going to learn how to do a visit. And what happens when you press people like this? Oh, some people saying, this is cruel. Oh my God, Andrew. Yeah, it means something. That might be the first, last, the only visit that patient will ever get. And if you screw up the death scene, it's screwed because our return policy sucks. There are no redos. We can't say, hey, Joe, get back in the body. Let's try that again. No, they're gone. And we've scarred that family. So screwing up is not an option in hospice.
How do you make latitude for them to bring their individuality into it? So that way there's still that heart and that purpose.
Easy. Because only 30% of the perfect visit is prescriptive. That liberates the mind to be able to perceive the needs of really who they're serving, the patient, of course, the caregivers as well. But by learning habits, because human behavior is based on these energy-saving mechanisms, you train them under stress conditions, because that's how stress is what anchors habits, because our human brain is seeking the most efficient way to do things. Once the pattern has been learned, and we have IRMs, of course, image recall mechanisms, which basically are cues that prompt people in stress conditions to be able to remember things and how to do them in the right sequence. At that point, it frees the personality, because nothing is missed. Nothing small, nothing large. Like our record right now, because again, our measurements are so outrageous compared to like CAP. CAP is like, and star ratings are just so low brow, because they consider like a 72 or 78, depending on whatever the question is, a good number, but that's technically average. It's not the 50th percentile, so it's a really low bar. Whereas we measure the number of visits, or thousands of visits, that they can go without a single complaint, service failure, or screw-ups. And of course, if a complaint is not reported up, it's immediate termination. I terminated 2 nurses at one hospice I had significant vestige in, and because it's not tolerable. Any MBI person that doesn't report a screw up or a complaint from a client is going to be fired immediately, and you just have to have that to maintain that. But right now, the record is 5,553 visits, beating the former record of 4,222 visits without a single complaint. That's nobody running out of meds, nothing. And that's the power of a perfect visit. But the only known way to get those extended periods of time without screw-ups and complaints is to have a process of training people. Especially, to me, phone interactions, perfect phone interactions, then perfect visits with perfect documentations. And that's the other things. All these hospices that we've trained over the years, we've only found one that we have went in. They were around 1,400 patients a day, pretty good sized outfit. And because we always say, okay, can you bring me a perfect chart for COPD? Oh, no, we don't have one of those. Okay, how about a CHF? Oh, no, don't have one of those. How about a dementia? No, don't have. How about any kind of cancer, generic? No, don't. And I'm going, how in the heck do you expect your clinicians to be able to chart perfectly when you can't even give them an example? So let's start by putting together examples. And we do the same thing with visits, because we're just taking advantage of really the way the mind works, and we put images of what perfect looks like, because otherwise people have very vague ideas. We can just say, do a perfect visit with 15 clinicians, and if you've not imprinted that image in their heads, you'll have 15 versions of it.
Do you find, Andrew, that the visit is a little bit easier, although it feels like you're really kind of describing a journey that is the road less traveled, but the phone interactions, because especially as hospices try to diversify palliative care, home-based primary care, the number of pathways in that phone call become exponentially more complicated. Have you navigated that? Is
Sure.
it work to talk about that?
Yeah, no. I mean, it can be done. Obviously, the more business segments we have, our quality goes down, because more dissipates quality. Again, take our Steve Jobs example, where you got Sugarman, ex-Pepsi CEO, going in all these directions, and Jobs comes in and says, wait a minute, we're only going to focus on these 3 things. So, a hospice, it might boil down to home care, inpatient, palliative. Okay, let's just say that. Okay. Whereas the hospital guy that says, man, Andrew, we love this model. Our hospice and our home health are just killing it, and we want it all over the health system. And I always have to say, hey, Hoss, let's back up. You're probably never going to be able to do it because you're trying to run 50 businesses. So by culling back our offerings and simplification, because complicated breaks, is a big key. So with this, it would have to be the sensitization, because first of all, you don't want automated systems. If we're doing that, we're smoking dope. If we have untrained people that haven't had rigorous training in how to answer the phone, we're not getting in there. And most hospices are not very good. However, it's better than a lot of the large health systems we work with. I did a training for 21 large systems recently, and they suck, if I can say that. Hopefully you don't have to edit that out. But anyway, compared to hospices, and hospices are not very good either. So the thing is, it comes back to quality. Quality comes within. We got to love our communities, our patients enough to put in the time to say, this is how we answer it, and we practice it where we get the mechanical feel out of it. Thank you for calling Sunny Day Hospice. This is Andrew. And then we go into the heavy listening. We write down so they never have to say their name again. We're listening for the emotionalized descriptor words, writing down that. And then if we ever have to transfer them to another areas, they don't have to say their name again. They don't have to retell their story. And it's just seamless. And you win a referral source, or you make a fan with a phone call, because it's so horrendous. And I think succeeding, I'm not going to say it's easy. It's a fairly simple thing, but it's easier than we think. I'm always just shocked at how easy my life is relative, because if we're going 8-10 months without a single screw up, well, obviously I'm not doing damage control. That doesn't even mean David been talking about. I mean, we don't even think about damage control because there's no damage to clean up. There's no relationship to patch up. We can think about innovation or where we want to go, or, have a good life.
Good employers know that health benefits can make or break your business. But while employers are looking out for their employees' best interest, who is looking out for theirs? Sona Benefits is an independent pharmacy benefit manager who partners with employers to optimize their pharmacy benefits while supporting their business goals. But by offering no-spread pricing, contract guaranteed rebates, and the Sona Max program, clients are regularly able to save 20% to 35% off their total drug spend. The result? Pharmacy benefits that improve employees' well-being and employers' bottom line.
But all that comes from quality. And so, but the phones, I will just say this, because the perfect visit gets a lot of
airtime.
Yeah, I mean, people are attracted, and rightfully so. I mean, it works. Folks got to think about their phones more. And again, we've got a great playbook, but it comes down to so few things. And we've found that with 2 hours of intensive training, there can be about a 70% increase in the quality of the phone experience. And so that's a fairly minimal investment. And in our System 7 training, we actually move that relatively close right after people are initiated in the model concepts and all that, which everybody, CNAs, everyone learns economics. They learn really the whole thing that a CFO would learn. Because, again, we don't underestimate the capabilities of anybody. We want to explore fully human potential. But we get into the phone quickly because it's something that can be done fairly in a few hours. And that sense of momentum, I've accomplished one thing. I have a pin that says I'm certified in this. But God help, I'll say, the hospice that just lets somebody answer the phone, let alone or do a visit, without them being properly trained. And a lot of the big corporate hospices right now, and I don't mean to belittle some, but boy, they are just literally, hey, you want a job? Here you go. Here's your caseload. You got hospice experience? Great. And there they go. And of course there's going to be screw-ups. People are failed by their systems. Most people want to do a good job. I take a view that not people are lazy or whatever. I think people want to do a great job. I think they're failed by their companies to provide their systems or the structures for success.
I don't know if I've ever asked you this before, but are you a huge fan of Deming?
Yeah.
You'd appreciate this. We did a skit at one of our leadership development institutes many years ago. Dave Cook, who's now the CEO of Hospice, soon Everett, he played Deming and I played Drucker, and we both dressed for the part. And the skit was this. Deming was all about systems and processes. Drucker was about mission, vision, and values. That's an oversimplification, but it's a pretty good one. And we did this wonderful kind of back and forth. And no, it's about, but you know the point is, it's actually, at least I believe it's both.
It's both. Well, and that's the thing about life. If I've had to reconcile all these catastrophic losses in my life, but yet, 2 kids dead from accidents. I've lost, use of both my arms. Just, one thing right after another. Natural disasters add to the list. And there has to be at some point some integration or reconciliation process that there's either a bothness mindset or a multi-mindset that has to come in, because singular explanations for anything are insufficient. Why? It's because every topic is infinite. So therefore, whatever explanation we have for a question, there is more to it. It's just like hospice, what is it? I think I've been working in it way too long. When I count it up, it's like 35.
I was going to say, you're 35 or 38 years.
MBI is around 30 now. And then, I had 5 or so years before that. But I only feel like I know an inch worth of what the potential knowledge and learning about this profound work that we do.
That's a very daunting comment. Let me ask you one final, and then I'll give you final thoughts. Because this is something I think you get painted, and I'm not sure it's a fair comment. Well, Andrew just believes that the guy who makes the biggest margin is obviously doing the best job.
No.
Explain.
No, it's about the sustainability. The fact that we do tend to produce these phenomenal economics, or like we can go in, someone's losing 10%, well, I'm up to 20. Okay, that's a 30% turn. But that's just it. I just know that you can't grind and ask people to do more and more. You want that stable business. And no, and I'll just say no by a huge quantum. That quality is it. The spirit of helpfulness, customer delight, serving people, honoring our promises and vows. That's what it's about. And if anybody really looks at our stuff, we have 20 manuals on almost every aspect of hospice, from volunteerism to board of directors to just almost name it. There's not that much about finance. Almost all of it is about people development and how do you inspire that workforce. I don't even like to talk about leadership. I do the seldom spoken aspects of leadership, but it's something I that's kind of everything. It's involved. I should say, let me just say it like this: leadership is around everything, right? And so there's a lot of that. I'll say even in an indirect way, but that we have to inspire the workforce. We have to motivate, because that's really what the job of the leader is, to get people going in a common direction, common goal, mission, inspiring them, getting our ideas, this intangible force out of our head into the heads of others, and winning, because really the job of a leader is success.
What final thoughts, Andrew, you have?
All I guess want really is that people take out the mirror, and myself included, and we take a look at it and say, what is real? What is truth? and what is the best and highest purpose I can be doing with my life. That's, I guess, I go back to those things all the time. I'm seeking reality. I'm seeking truth. What is? Because if it's not based on reality and truth, and this is where the numbers help us out. They don't explain everything because, frankly, the most important things in this world cannot be measured. To me, numbers peter out at a certain point because try to measure love. Try to measure compassion. Well, I don't have a thermometer that I can just poke and say, man, this guy's got more compassion, whatever. I can't even do that with a hit song. When we had like a few of the billboards, like we produced that top 5 Billboard album, I didn't know that was going to be, I was going to get a call from Billboard say, hey, you got a top 5 record in this USA. And I didn't have a thermometer to say that was going to happen. It just happened. But I think dedicating ourselves to the truth, that's what I think is the highest we can do. And it starts with the question, because, again, most answers are dead ends, whereas questions imply a quest, and that's movement, which that aligns with the nature of life. It is movement and change. And our hospice world makes that very self-evident.
That's incredible, Andrew. And to think we started this talking about margin, but I think that's very profound, because I do think that, you push back if you disagree, that the margin is a barometer. It's like a CAT scan on the organization, but that's just like saying, well, I just took a CAT scan of you and I now understand you as a human being. No, it's just a tool to help the physical body. But the human being is much broader than that. The margin is very similar.
Yeah, the margin, and really all the numbers. Like here we measure these 989 data elements with these 922 cross calculations from approximately 1,000 hospices. It always shows lesser number because there's some in there that have like 50, 40 sites, and I'm always gasp at that. But anyway, the importance of the numbers is, just like you said, they're tools. And to me, the numbers give us a roadmap that we can take a look at these 900 points or whatever, and we can work with intelligence. We know where to precisely direct our energy, our resources for the benefit of the organization. And that is one of the main things in the MBI world. We use the red circle method. We just run out the benchmarking reports because you have to have that perspective of comparing yourself with other organizations, elite organizations, not just not-for-profits, not just a certain little peer group or anything like that. The whole world, because you want hot dogs, you want large, you want small. And so we have that professional perspective between those and say, we're not so good in this. And thus we take our red pen or marker, or as I is becoming a CPA, a red pencil, and we circle those areas. And then it comes down to the question, what is the best known specific practice we could implement? And that's how we move the numbers from a -10 to a 20 in about 9 months. And I'm not saying everyone has to go to that 20 number, but we certainly should be 200 or 300% better than the 50th percentile or the median. Because if you're just running with like a 5% margin, you don't have a lot of screw-up factor, especially if you haven't built up a lot of reserves. And of course, we advise most organizations to have 6 to 9 months of cash reserves. That way, you can retool. If somebody outmodels, you have some hot dog Multiview or Telios hospice come in and just decimate your census. Well, if you got money in the bank, that buys you time to get your quality.
I've always wanted to ask you, have you taken these principles into your music business as well, out of curiosity?
Yeah, to some, but I find it a little more difficult. Again, I'm under Richard Branson's outfit, so a lot of my stuff's coming out of London and what have you, and we do not have the same sway there. They look at me like I'm just this artist guy.
You had other businesses come to you, like try to apply it to.
Oh yeah. No, there's been a ton. Agriculture, retail, manufacturing. I did 38. Yeah. For example, one of the major brokerage firms I won't mention, but they fly their corporate jet down and pick me up like every month. And I go and I teach them about customer delight and service and even standardization. And here's the crazy thing is whenever I go into something that's not hospice at this point, I always say, well, what are your measurements and all that? Because I don't pretend to be an authority on all things. Nobody can do that. And so there I said, well, what's your average return for your average investor? These are, hundreds of billions of dollars, going, oh, well, we really don't know what it is nationally here. Oh, well, what about the fees? What's the average fees? And it's just like,
wow. That's
what the benchmarking is like in most industries. And that's one thing when I look at the Multiview thing, and I'm not trying to toot our own horn, and these hospital guys, okay, I just did these 21 CFOs and all their stuff, and they don't have anything near the benchmarking we have in hospice. I mean, when we go, we got 989, and then it's instantaneous almost, 20-second delay when your results come back and you get a full data set. They don't have anything like that. And so I haven't found it in the brokerage world of the Merrill Lynch's and the Beards and Goldman Sachs and all that, and as well as other places. They'll know some, but people are pretty covetous, I think, of their data, and that's probably part of the problem. I'm not even saying it's a problem. Oh, yeah, it is. It'd be nice to measure, but it's more scant. They use a much more broad brush.
Well, Andrew, let me just end with just thanking you. I mean, you've impacted so many of us throughout this. I hate calling hospice an industry because it's a injustice. It's a field. It's an incredible movement. And
a movement.
It's a beautiful
We're still movement. Like, we're still innovating.
And just for you to say that, with your experience and say that comment of, I still only understand that much, that just hits me as a very profound comment. So thank you. You've impacted my life. You've impacted my family's life. I'm ever in your debt for that. And so you told me, it'll change your life. And you were 100% right.
No, and Chris, the point is, and you're doing great things. And listen, you took this hospice from, I think we had census of 20-something, like 29 or whatever, and build it up into this great thing, which that was the potential. And of course, you outgrow the box. On some level, you got to go to the next place. And that's just the natural evolution of really the exploration of our potentials and stuff. And you're doing great things. These settings, these surroundings, great digs. And I just thank you for, inviting me and letting me speak some of my nonsense.
No, it was great wisdom. Thank you for taking the time. And this is only our second podcast we've actually done in studio. Most of the time our guests are elsewhere. So you're extra special because you're the only second time we brought someone in studio.
Oh boy.
And so thank you for doing that.
Thank you so much.
Well, to our listeners, we want to thank you. And of each episode, we always leave you with a quote, a visual. This one's going to be really fun. We call it a brain bookmark. It's a thought prodder about our podcast subject to further your learning and growth and thereby your leadership. What we're going for is like a brain tattoo. We want it to stick. Be sure to subscribe. Don't want you to miss an episode. We're going to give a link to Andrew's Multiview, to his podcast, maybe even some of his records as well. And so thanks for listening to Anatomy of Leadership. And here's our brain bookmark to close today's show.
Quality comes from within. Our lives don't just happen. They flow out of us.